Welcome back to another episode of the Battle Buddy podcast. You definitely want to pay attention today, especially if you're a professional, if you're looking to get out of the military and get that next post military job, if you're a veteran looking for that next job, or if you're just looking to professionally network. We're going to talk a lot about LinkedIn, what you need to know, how you can leverage it, and a lot of other things about LinkedIn. So I've got the guy who knows a lot about it. He wrote the book on it. So we're going to dive right into everything you know about LinkedIn today.
Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Keith. Man, I like the intro. That was slick.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm excited to have you on here and talk about LinkedIn. I mean, it's obviously something that, those of us who've crossed over to the Veteran Cool Kid Club, we're all familiar with because of the TAPS program. But for those service members who haven't yet, their time is coming to be smacked in the back of the head by the TAPS people. If you go get your LinkedIn profile. But before we dive into all that, tell us a little bit about yourself and your military career.
Served in the Air Force active duty for just under 8 years. Started out under the Greater Wing of Air Force Public Affairs and then transitioned it into Air Education and Training Command. And then I've been working in the nonprofit world almost exclusively ever since, and speaking and writing on veterans issues.
Okay, awesome. And Air Education and Training Command, what exactly was your role in that?
I was a military training instructor.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I remember that from our conversation before.
Yeah,
but, which totally blew my mind when we did our little pre-show interview. I was like, man, that just doesn't seem like.
Yeah. I could be pretty loud.
Oh, I bet, but it just just didn't seem like, I don't know. You think of those guys as being pretty intense, and you're pretty down to earth kind of guy. So, I guess that's just maybe it's PTSD or whatever from.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the that's kind of the persona of the instructor. They have this air about them that that trainees think is confident and infallible and short fuse sometimes or whatever. But yeah, I guarantee you they were all human beings, and they all get tired and get sad and laugh, and a lot of them go to the break room and they laugh about things that trainees did, and
yeah, well, I should back up and say I guess I don't know. Some people could get PTSD from that makes us really sound bad because we're both Air Force guys, but yeah, I don't know about that laughing and joking around. We had a guy who filled in when I was in basic training. I don't know what his role was. I don't know if he was reserves or whatever, but he was a training instructor. He was batshit crazy. He would headbutt the glass, and
oh man,
like he was polar opposite from our training instructor, because our training instructor was, dare I say, kind of cool. I mean, he was a training instructor, but comparatively speaking.
What year was it? See, the reserve MTIs have some of them are legendary. So depending on what year it is, I might even know who you're talking about.
I was in 2006. I was in the 324th Training Squadron.
Okay.
That's all I'll say. Sure. I don't want to call people out.
Yeah, don't call out any names.
I definitely won't call people out. But yeah, it was that was an interesting experience. I would say I was not a fan of the section head. I was not a fan of the reservist. RTI was pretty cool. I felt bad for my brother flight because on weekends RTI would. This is how cool he was. He would let us listen to music, but he gave our dorm chief. He said you got to change the channel every 30 minutes to a different type of music so everybody gets a chance to listen. But that's the only day he would let us do it, and he'd only let us do it for like 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours. Okay, cool. A little bit of a break, right? Our brother flight was over there listening to marching cadences all day long.
That's torture.
They hated us.
I believe it. Yeah,
there was that friction, Anyway,
yeah.
So, but anyway, back to the topic at hand here of LinkedIn. There's obviously a lot to it, but that's something that obviously people pound into our heads when you leave the service, and they didn't really do much in the TAPS program other than, hey, go get a LinkedIn profile, fill it out, and go get a job and a resume. They didn't really tell you too much about it. Right. It's obviously a complicated platform. It's really for professional networking and some other things. I see some people use it a little bit more personally, like Facebook.
Right. Yep.
I'll get your 2 cents on that probably later. But
Sure. Yep.
what first question here really is, what should a current service member,
Mm.
what should they know about it, and what should they be looking at it, how they can use it and leverage it?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is that you just need to get on it, and the correct timing is yesterday. I mean, I don't care if you just started. You're finished your first 6 months in your first enlistment. You should get on LinkedIn. Depending on when you take your transition assistance course, depending on where that lines up with your separation or retirement, many times by the time you get to tap, if they say, start a LinkedIn page and you haven't yet, I'm not going to say it's too late, but you really have an uphill battle. You absolutely should if you haven't yet at that point. But the earlier that you can do that, the better. There is some ideas, some preconceived notions that prevent people from doing that. And there is just kind of a lack of communication, where I can scream from the rooftops about LinkedIn and the value of LinkedIn for veterans and military transitioners till I'm blue in the face. But the people who I really want to get that message to are on the other side of a wall, and there are gatekeepers, and there are, I wish I could mandate, have a CBT that starts for the first year. For anybody who is enlisted or commissioned, you hit your first year and you start taking regular, transition awareness courses, and that would include LinkedIn. If I had my druthers, I'd do that. So the sooner you can do it, the better. And anything you've heard about it, just being another Facebook or whatever, I mean, it's different. It has some similarities to a lot of other platforms, but the overarching idea behind it right now, because we all know social platforms evolve, is it has been and still remains to this day to be the best remote digital professional networking platform in the world. There's almost 1 billion users worldwide. And it's kind of an expectation, really, especially in the corporate world and medium, large employers. It's just kind of expected that you have that.
Absolutely. I heard you say something there really
Sure.
that I couldn't agree with more about starting early, because I've said that to people, like, you should have a plan to transition from the moment or before you even get in service. Because I don't care who you are, you're either going to serve, 4 years or 20 or 25, whatever, 10, whatever it is. Your time is going to come up and you're going to go on to the next chapter. It's inevitable. And it's not permanent.
Yeah.
So you should plan accordingly. The same thing goes for, your financials and your thrift savings plan and taking care of your education, all of that. So all of it's, you should plan all of that from the beginning. Take advantage of every little bit of it.
That's great advice. And also life insurance and succession and inheritance planning and that sort of thing. Because, you could choke on a cabbage leaf while you're serving and die. Like, at some point, you're not going to be in the military anymore. And that means you're either going to separate or retire. You're going to get discharged. Sometimes at short notice, if it's like a medical thing or whatever, or if there's a reduction in forces, or you're going to die. At some point, you won't be in the military anymore. So planning for those eventualities, the earlier you can do it, the better. The life insurance one is huge. You have people in the military thinking that, and I know this isn't LinkedIn related, but they're like, I got my SGLI, I'm good. And then they retire at 45 years old and they're like, oh, I should probably get an actual life insurance, civilian life insurance plan now. And they're 45 and they're 80% service connected disabled. And it's a massive cost to start a life insurance plan at that point. I think that should, getting civilian life insurance at 18, that'll save you money for the rest of your life and help you prepare for the eventuality of an unexpected disaster for you and your family.
Definitely a lower cost, but
yeah,
hey, if only we could just smack that into people's heads to be prepared for that, for all those different things. So, but how about LinkedIn for the veterans then? how
Mm.
should they be really looking at it? If somebody's been out, whether it's 6 months or 6 years,
Mm.
how should they be trying to leverage LinkedIn, or is there really much of a difference?
So LinkedIn is a part of a larger puzzle. It's a very important part of a larger, if you look at a pie graph sort of thing. And that larger idea is professional network development. The goal is to develop an engaged, organically built professional network. And we can talk about that. That's a really important caveat. Organically built professional network that is mutually beneficial and fruitful. To know someone who knows someone, to know a guy or gal who knows a guy or gal, to be well connected, to have a platform, whether that is in person or online, is the best way to build a business. It's the best way to build a platform of influence. It's the best way to get a job. It's the best way to expand and grow and develop your career. That professional network, that hasn't changed. That whole idea since the 80s, really, like aggressive professional networking and knowing someone on the inside is the best way to get the job, to make the sale, to build business karma by connecting other people. It really is important. And right now, and for the foreseeable future, LinkedIn is the best way to do that digitally, remotely, in the web. You cannot do it exclusively remotely. There are challenges. Obviously, if you're in the service, you're pretty much going to be networking for your post-service career exclusively remotely. So you need to be using LinkedIn. If you're already out or you're approaching your transition, that coupled with kind of more of the having coffee, warm handshake, face-to-face sit down, informational interviews, advice sessions, that sort of thing. It's integral to your success in pretty much every way. The old adage, your network is your net worth, is not an exaggeration. It's not a lie. It's not old fashioned. It is 100% accurate.
Absolutely. So I had heard years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and this just popped in my head, that you should get on LinkedIn. I don't know if this was from Taps or not, so I don't know how old this
Okay.
goes back. That you should get on there like every day, and you should just go, find 2 or 3 people that you know or loosely connected with, and go
Mm-hmm.
follow them. Is that still kind of a good strategy, or how do you go about building that network? Because there is, like, obviously when you're connected to somebody, they're a first connection, and you got a second level, and I think third level. And
Yeah.
another thing that they do is they tell you on your when you look at somebody's profile, who all those mutual connections
Mm-hmm.
are. So,
Right.
like, how do you go about doing that?
So this is assuming first that your profile is optimized. Your profile doesn't have to be perfect. It will be kind of a living, breathing thing that evolves as you evolve professionally and you change things and word things differently. It does not have to be perfect, but it does have to be complete. So take a minute to make sure that your profile is filled out, and then absolutely developing your network is an important step too. And so my advice when developing a network is to do it in a very targeted fashion. LinkedIn wants you to do targeted network development and only connect with people you know, which is kind of a bit extreme for my taste. But ironically, they also suggest, like, here's some people that you may tangentially know through this person or this person. Like, you went to the same college. Yeah, so did 50,000 other people. So there's no,
I've always
anyways.
thought that one was funny. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
So many. What year did they graduate? Like, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
we weren't in the same department, and so it gives you the option to one click connect, and that is impersonal. It doesn't necessarily provide value. I mean, it could. Uh, the thing about targeted network development is start with your circles. Start with people you know. Start with grandma and grandpa if they're on LinkedIn. Start, mom and dad, your brothers, sisters, cousins. Go to people you know from college, from high school, people you serve with in the military who are already LinkedIn. Reach out to those people, because that's not a high pressure ask. They're going to recognize your name and they're going to connect with you. From there, your research. Research is an important phase of your network development. If you go into your search bar at the top of your LinkedIn browser window or whatever, and you hit enter without putting anything in there, it brings up their full search filters. And the thing that sets LinkedIn apart, that makes it the most powerful professional platform in existence right now, is less of the social media aspects and more of the database aspects. It's the largest professional database in the history of the world. And it's not like second place isn't even close, not even in the same galaxy. And so using those search tools to be able to whittle down, you can niche down to first and second level connections. You can niche down to finding people who have some sort of connection with you, that a leverage point, a connection point. So if it's me searching for the first time, let's say I'm 6 months from service, or 6 months from my separation rather, and I live in San Antonio, but I'm moving to Boston after I get out, and I want to work in IT. What I'm going to do is I'm going to search exclusively in the Boston area for IT or some sort of tech professionals. And I'm going to be searching for folks who also served in the Air Force, or, you look for previous job, United States Air Force. You want to look for military members, previous job, United States Army, Air Force, Marines. Don't click the Marine recruiting one. Marines, why do you have a separate LinkedIn company page for Marine recruiting? Give me a break. Look for Space Force, look for Coast Guard, all the different branches if you want to expand. And they'll give you a list. And at first that list will be short because you don't have a big network. But as it grows, your second and third degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of expand, right? And it will provide you a list of like, here's all of the Air Force veterans in Boston who work in IT. That's a great list of people to reach out to. So niching down, or like, and if they give you 400 people in that list, that's a lot. Why don't you see, maybe Air Force veterans who went to your alma mater, or Air Force veterans who also served in a specific squadron, or who have also served in San Antonio. You can find all these different connection points who volunteer with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. They give you all the options to niche down on things that could potentially be a connection point between you and other people. Then you reach out to them, send a connection request, and always add a personalized note. If you're just starting, always send a personalized note. Don't ask for anything. Don't attach a resume. Don't expect anything. You're not entitled to a job just because you're a veteran. There are a lot of you. It's very competitive. And what you're doing is you're planting seeds and reaching out to people. Hey, I noticed that you are in the Boston area working in IT. That's where I'm going after I get out. I'm also an Air Force veteran. I'd be honored if you'd join my LinkedIn network. Done. Ask for nothing. Sometimes they'll reach out, they'll reply and be like, hey, let's get a coffee when you get here, or hey, let's hop on a Zoom call, or, oh, hey, are you looking for something in IT? Because I know this person who blah, blah, blah. A lot of times they'll offer, sometimes they won't. Whatever, at least you're growing your network of people who you can mutually provide value for. So that, especially when you get your first 500 connections, whether you have 501 or 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, if you're over 500, there's that little 500 plus badge when it says how many connections you have. And you use that as kind of a goalpost. Anyone on LinkedIn has that 500. You have more than 500 connections. Just make sure that those first 500, that it's done in a very targeted fashion, and that you are reaching out to those people personally. You can do 5 a day, and it takes 15 minutes. And you should just do that enduringly. Find different connections points, not even the same industry. If you want to find all the Air Force veterans in Boston, all the fellow Army veterans in Boston, do that. Reach out to those people. And so that's a good starting point. And that'll keep you busy for a long time.
That would definitely keep you busy. I felt like I knew quite a bit about LinkedIn, but holy cow, I had no idea that you could do that with the search feature.
It's the biggest. It is a. I don't know why it's a little known weapon, but the fact that LinkedIn is a database and that it is powerful and gives you the opportunity to laser focus your searches for mutually fruitful connection points it's the best thing about LinkedIn. Period.
That just sent a bunch of people down the rabbit hole, way down the rabbit hole. But yeah. Another interesting thing you said, like the message. Yeah, just
Mm.
be genuine.
Hmm.
Just be genuine, be authentically you. There's nothing worse than some of those LinkedIn messages or the
Cut and
connection
paste.
requests that
Mm.
oh yeah, the in mail, or don't be that person that sends it and then follows up like an hour later with the hard pitch.
Oh
We
yeah.
all get them. I was in a Zoom chat like last week, and somebody was joking about it, and I started laughing, and they're like, "What's funny?" And I was like, "What's funny is that's literally happened already that day." And this was a Zoom chat
Oh
at
yeah.
10 o'clock in the morning. It's like,
Oh, it's
I mean,
nuts.
it's that common.
And that's one thing that can sour people to the platform, because just like any social media platform, there's a lot of garbage to sift through. And that's why it's doubly important for your first for that first chunk of your connections in particular to be targeted, and for you to have a personal connection point. As transactional and short-lived as it may be, it's really important, because those are the people who are going to populate your news feed. Those are the people who are going to populate your inbox. It's possible for you can go with the service and have 30,000 connections overnight. I know someone who did that. He paid a service, had 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, and decided that wasn't enough. So he opened a second LinkedIn account and paid to max that out. And he used to brag. He'd be like, "Oh man, like I'm big time. I got 30,000. I maxed out my connections on LinkedIn, and I needed another, profile to do that." Um, but he would make a post or a call out or something, and he'd get zero engagement. And so if you were to look at that person's network and look at where they were from, they're like all from Bangladesh, India, Auckland. And there's nothing wrong with being from those places, but this person being in sales in Wisconsin, obviously not a mutually beneficial opportunity. And a lot of those profiles are just throwaway, not used, some bots. But yeah, the number that you have, the number of connections that you have and followers that you have is a worthless number on LinkedIn, as it is on Twitter and Instagram and whatnot. It's about the quality and the depth of those connections. And so the earlier you start having an intentional focus on that outreach, the better.
Yeah, great point. People in those places aren't useful to you unless they're engaged,
Yeah.
or that's your target business audience because you happen to do
Mhm.
something internationally and whatever their niche is. So,
But you go with this service, they're just gonna automate you sending a cut and
right.
paste message to those people, and to 500,000 people, and then you get 30,000 accepts. And okay, you've got a full network. Great, good for you. None of them care about you. None of them care about what you're selling. They don't care what you say. They're not going to engage with your content. They're just following just because. And they're probably paying a service to help stack their network too, because they don't know any better. And so you've got a situation that is mutually wasteful.
I like the way you put that. Mutually wasteful. It's
Mhm.
probably just a bunch of interconnected accounts that I'll probably
Yeah,
look at that now. That anytime I see that, like, oh, thousands upon thousands of
yeah.
followers, I'll be definitely much more conscious of
Mm.
what's going on there. So now, how about you? You kind of mentioned profiles and
Yeah,
completeness.
yeah.
Now, I actually look, actually every guest that I've had on this podcast, I look all of them up. I look them up on LinkedIn first. Look up as many places as I can, but I do see varying degrees of completeness when
Yeah.
I do that. That's some people I've not even been able to find a LinkedIn.
Mm.
It's amazing. Some people put their entire life story on there and are super active. Some people have, just the basics. You can get a little bit of information about their education and where they come from, and a few little skills and some other things. But
Mhm.
what what would you say makes a complete profile, and what are some of the do's and don'ts of
Mm.
profiles?
It's a long conversation,
Yeah.
but what I will say is your your three most important parts. Your name, it's a really easy one. It shouldn't be in all upper or all lowercase. capitalize it like you would writing in an email or in a book. Some people like adding emojis before or after their name. Personal preference, I suppose, but having emojis in the front end before your name actually makes it more difficult for people to find you in a search or a tag if they want to tag you in a message. Some people like having alphabet soup after their name, like Mr. Andy Johnson, comma, MBA, MLA, PhD, SHRM. I mean, you just long list of PMP. Personal preference, I'm not a fan of it, but I mean, if I had a PhD, I would probably put that on LinkedIn. I would.
That one's understandable. The rest of it, you could pretty much put in the description right below it, right?
Right. And I get why people would put PMP there because, having a project management professional certification or having like a Scrum Master or the black belt, do you know what I'm talking about?
Six Sigma or something.
Yeah, that's it. That would be attractive to a recruiter, someone who would be trying to employ you via LinkedIn. But again, that should definitely be in your description. It should be in your certifications. It should maybe even be in your headline. Just be deliberate about your name because you don't want to look, that's one of the first things that people see. Next to that, people see your profile picture. It's really important. And I see a lot of folks in veteran land have their photo from their military headshot. And I was guilty of this at first too.
The whole,
with my, me, imagine that angry 45 pounds ago or whatever.
Yeah.
But with the campaign hat looking all tough. And my logic behind that was I thought people would see that and be like, wow, that's the ultimate professional. That guy's polished and blah, 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 and yes, they may think that, but they subconsciously will view that as other and separate. They want to hire people who they think are going to be cultural fits first and foremost. And people would look at my picture, me in my campaign hat, I think, and be like, well, okay, thanks for your service, but I don't want you in the break room. I don't want you hanging out with us. I don't want you part of the team.
We don't want you breaking out the knife hand,
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a long conversation that accompanies the profile picture thing, because there are unfortunately subconscious prejudices that civilian employers have against military members and veterans. And these are, whether they have magnetic ribbons on their cars or not. And so it's important that you dress for the job you want and you display that you are dressing for the job you want. If you have to consider it civilian camouflage at first until you feel mentally transitioned, that's fine. But if you're dressing for the job you want, that's not in a military uniform anymore. I'm sorry. So your professional headshot, as this is a preparation for you making a transition, if you're within a year of your transition, you need a civilian attire professional headshot. And you should be, brace for it, smiling in that picture.
She cracks some sort of smile, some
sort of smile,
emotion on your face, right?
And there's science behind that. There's data that shows that people view you as more confident, more capable, more personable, better team player just by simply smiling in your photo. So that's something that you got to have. And then the next third important thing is your headline. And that's that thing that LinkedIn automatically populates with, job title at location, which is a huge missed opportunity. By doing that, people are missing an opportunity. That's your billboard. That is an opportunity for an elevator pitch that is just pitching 24/7 on your behalf. And so having your headline be something that expresses what you do, how you do it, who you serve, to what extent, the value you provide, shows a little bit of personality. The headlines are an art form, man. They really are. And they're super important because they show up next to every post you make, every comment, every reply. That headline is there and it's constantly giving you that elevator pitch on your behalf. So that first part of it, formula that people use is I help blank accomplish blank through or by blank. It's corny, but I'd start there. At least it gets you in the thought process of, who do I serve? How do I serve them? You may need to be broad if you're doing a career transition. And I have like a chapter on, writing headlines for career transitions in the headline section of my book or whatever. And it gets pretty granular, but that headline is crazy important. And then for the rest of it, completion, visual completion. Doesn't have to be long, but you shouldn't have blank sections. You shouldn't have broken links. You shouldn't have images that don't populate. Just make sure it's complete.
Awesome. Great point to make here. I've got your book link, LinkedIn Mastery for
LinkedIn Mastery for veterans and transitioning
and
service members. Rolls right off the tongue, right?
I know, right? Totally got myself tongue tied right here. It's in the show notes. Got to scroll across the bottom there. But yeah, for completeness, there's so many other things there. Skills, education, volunteer things, just off the top of my head. There's a lot of those things that thinking specifically back since we're Air Force, thinking of those things that, end up on your EPRs, your performance reports, all those volunteer things you do, right? Go back to those, if you're still serving and say, what kind of things did I volunteer for? Right. Go pull those up and be like, hey, for a couple of years here, I went to this soup kitchen and I did this. Okay. Go put that in there. That I did this, these couple of years, right? It may sound kind of corny. You may have only done it 4 or 5 times. It's still an experience.
Well, if I want to get to know
those skills that you do in your job and put some of those skills in there, get those listed in there, and don't focus on the, speaking to the grunts here, that you can, shoot targets accurately at 300 yards. Like, focus on other skills, personable skills, those kind of things that are going to matter to an employer, that you're prompt, that you can work on Microsoft products and, those kind of things, right? Or what other skills you've learned through your college experiences or whatever. But fill all of them out. Go through every section and think.
It doesn't take that long either. And use somebody else's complete profile as a jumping off point. To imitate. Obviously, have your own personal information in there. Filling your experience section. Your EPR bullets are great. You just have to unmilitaryify them, take out the acronyms, soften the verbiage, make it sound like something. And then when you're done with that, have a civilian buddy who doesn't know the military review it to say, do you understand this?
Here's a good one for you. Take those EPR bullets, copy and paste them into something like Chat GPT and say, write this in a soft manner. Or something like that.
Rewrite these for a civilian resume. That's a great idea. Man, ChatGPT, I'm telling you.
Here's another one. If you're still in the service, there's always, civilians that are working in your unit. They've all had to build resumes to get their job through USA Jobs. Start working together with those senior NCOs and the officers and those people who are, have transitioned and say, who's got a resume? Who's got a LinkedIn? Who's got one that's filled out? Like, ask them if they'll host a seminar in your unit about doing it, and have everybody bring their personal laptops and just start filling them out together, collaborate together. Couple of hours in a session, start working it out together, and do it together.
The earlier, the better. And if it's possible to build a culture within the military of being forward thinking, and it's tough. I sympathize. You're mission focused. You got a lot going on. You got the mission, you got your unit, you got your family, you got your community. There's a lot. So I'm not asking a huge time commitment of people, but I think it would be really important for the military to start building into the culture a forward, post-military, forward-thinking element to their training, because there's a lot of talk about recruiting right now, and it's really hard to recruit talent when you have veterans who are vocal about not being prepared, not being taken care of, not being, how many veterans are out there saying that my military service set me up for the future professionally, personally, financially. Like that was a good professional experience for me. It was for me personally, and I evangelized for it, but I know not everybody feels that way. And so by taking care of people and ensuring that they can transition quickly, effectively, it's a journey, as quickly as is possible, effectively, and achieve success after service, is a force multiplier, because those folks will be evangelists for joining the system. So it's not a waste of time or resources to put post-service career training into the curriculum if you want to have people say, I'm glad I did this. It helped my career. Because if people are not saying that, and especially if they're saying the opposite, like military didn't help me for my transition. It didn't help my resume. Didn't help me get a job. Didn't help me blah, blah, blah. All the things people say. That's not going to encourage this generation to want to sign up.
Yeah. Plus, there's the old saying: "You take care of your people take care of you." If you're purposely doing things to take care of your people, with setting them up for their eventual transition,
Yeah.
and their financial success and their insurance, you're having all these different conversations with them. Eventually, they're going to face that and be like, "Well, do I want to reenlist? It's been 3 years. It's time to reenlist, or I'm hitting that 10-year mark. Do I want to push for 20? What do I do? But if they sit there and they think, well, my leadership and my NCOs have taken care of me, and they've set me up for success on the outside, but they've also taken care of me.
Yeah.
Then you've got a choice. You got success either way. You got leadership that's taking care of you, or you have every opportunity to succeed on the outside.
Yeah.
It's a win-win. Like you said, you go out there, you succeed, and you evangelize, and you're spreading good, positive messages. So, but couldn't agree more with that. But another interesting thing I wanted to ask your opinion on LinkedIn was
Sure.
LinkedIn Premium. I know some veterans can get it free,
They
but
can.
what's your take on that? Is it worth it? Why should you get it? How should you get it? Those kind of things.
So if you Google search, LinkedIn Premium free for veterans and military families, it'll bring you to their social impact page. Sign in through ID.me or whatever they're using these days to verify your service, and you get a free year of premium. They don't say it's just 1 year. They don't like. So my advice is to, yes, get your year of free premium. Prior to that year expiring, cancel your subscription. So it'll have a set date for it not being in premium anymore. And after it runs out, do it again. I haven't paid for premium for years and years and years. It's just been free every time. So that's my secret advice. If you're a military member, you can do it more than once. Maybe they close the loophole, or they will at some point, but it's not just 1 year, or at least it hasn't been. So that's the first thing. So there's really no downside to it. It's not like, when's the best time to do it? It's like, just do it. So do you need premium to be successful on LinkedIn? No. Does anyone look at the gold badge and be like, okay, this is a better professional? No. The thing that LinkedIn Premium has that is worth its weight in gold is the LinkedIn Learning platform that's associated with it. A lot of computer-based training modules to help with thousands, to help with a wide range of things. There's military transition modules taught by LinkedIn's head of military outreach, Corey Boatwright, which is fantastic. They have, civilian workplace etiquette. They have specific training on, Facebook ad marketing, or like everything that you would want to know. Great way to diversify your skill set and to get educated. They give you little certificates for it. And that you can actually put on your LinkedIn profile that shows that you're like actively trying to learn and upskill and blah, blah, blah. But it's really valuable. All that information is great. And you have unlimited access to that while you're in premium. And then also you get to do more searches, more in-mails, that sort of thing. But not having premium, I've gone through stretches before I knew that you could do it more than 1 year. I've gone through stretches where I haven't had premium, and it's not been like a huge thing. When you're first getting started and trying to build that network aggressively, trying to get to that 500 plus with your targeted outreach, you may butt up on limits if you are on the free version.
Well, that's definitely some good advice. At least take advantage of it until or if they close the loophole. So
yeah, I'm not even sure if it's a loophole. I am not sure.
They may not care. I mean, it may not. Look,
Yeah.
we're a very small percentage of the population. It's
Right.
probably not affecting their bottom dollar that
Right.
much to give veterans some free premium. So,
Yep, it's a good look for them too.
Well, it's good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
And it's helping them. So,
Hmm.
another thing that you mentioned when we talked a while ago, um, and I'm going to quote you mentioned destigmatizing content creation during the transition process.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly did you mean by that? And what might
Yeah.
that kind of look like for somebody, content creation during transition?
I think a lot of people are really tired of social media. And so the social media aspects or the things that LinkedIn has that appear to be social media-esque or Facebook-esque can sometimes be intimidating. And I've heard thousands of times, like, nah, I don't really feel like sharing my personal feelings, my life, what I had for dinner, and I don't feel like making content. Or, oh gosh, I've heard, I'm not trying to be an influencer or anything like that. It's frustrating. First off, the whole I don't want to be an influencer or anything like that's like if you've never worked out before and you're saying like, well, I don't want to go to the gym because I don't want to get too muscular.
Yeah, I
Like
don't
you
want to be a
can't just
bodybuilder going to the gym
yeah,
once a week.
you can't just decide to be an influencer. Like that takes a lot of work, a lot of time. And even if you get lucky and go viral on one thing, there's a lot of maintenance because all of a sudden people have expectations of you and whatnot. So I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. And nobody's going to think you're trying to be an influencer. Nobody's going to roll their eyes at you unless you have like the worst, most contrived clickbaity posts, which don't do that. And then you're fine.
Or you're out there just being like, look at me, I'm an influencer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like self-proclaiming it, or I mean, we all know there's those kind of people out there, and yeah,
Sure are.
everybody's rolling their eyes at them anyway. So,
but a lot of people they don't want to deal with another social media platform. They don't want to share their thoughts or feelings or whatever. And my answer to that is, okay, then don't. Like, don't share your thoughts or feelings, right? It's possible for you to share your journey without explicitly saying somebody help me, because that looks desperate and that's not a good look. You can share your journey. You can ask for advice. There are ways that you can make content that reaches your target audience. Because remember, you built your audience in a targeted fashion. Those are all mutually beneficial connections. Now you have 500 plus of them. Are you going to reach out to all of them every day and get touch points in? Just say, how's it going? No, probably not. That would be a full-time job. But if you create content and you share your story and your journey and you show up in one of their news feeds, guess what? That counts as a touch point. And all of a sudden you're touching large groups of people in your network. Let's say they engage with that post. They're likely to see more stuff from you. They're going to remember your name. So when you post like, hey, my transition's coming up in a year, little nervous about it. For people who have transitioned, what should I know? What's your best piece of advice? People love giving advice. Make a post like that. Don't say, I'm transitioning in a year, who has a job? That's a bad look. But there's nothing personal or excessively vulnerable about saying, what's your best piece of advice for someone that's transitioning? Or I'm going to be relocating to Boston. What are some of the best IT firms out there that I should be looking into? Even if you know what the best IT firms are, ask it. Put it out there. People want to help you, and you are on folks' radar. And then when you get to the point where I'm 3 months out and I'm starting to look for jobs, like that network has been primed. You primed the pump. You've planted the seeds already. That's why content creation is so important, because it gets you in front of those folks who you are trying to reach frequently and at scale.
Yeah, there's a lot of other great things you could do too. Like if you're a talented writer, LinkedIn has LinkedIn articles.
They
You can just write
absolutely
an
do.
article every now and then instead of
Yep.
posting pictures of your food or whatever. You could. There's a lot of different things you could do that don't take a whole lot. Just kind of go with your skill set.
You can post a picture of your food. It doesn't really get a lot of traction on LinkedIn, but what if you wrote a story around it? I had a lunch meeting yesterday, and I was really impressed by by our wait staff. Here's what they did that tells me that they're trained well. That's a great businessy centric story. I got a flat tire on my way to work yesterday. Here's what it taught me about risk preparedness, risk management. You can
Or
take
get
the
out
most.
there and teach your industry too. Like, hey, this is what I'm in the industry I'm in.
Mhm.
Here's where my level of genius or knowledge base, whatever is. Like, this is what I
Mhm.
do. Here's what you need to know about it. Like, here's a video. Here's an article that I wrote. Here's whatever. Or where'd you
Whatever
go?
industry or discipline you're in, you should have unique thoughts and opinions about it. I guarantee you do. Even if you're in a career transition, I'm sure if you want to go to a different field, I'm sure you have unique thoughts and opinions or questions about that. Share your expertise, your subject matter expertise. Write a LinkedIn article about it. They're searchable in Google now. So like you don't even need, if you want to have a blog, do it through LinkedIn. You don't even need your own website. You don't have to futz with that.
And you can
Uh,
make them slightly controversial, not super controversial, just enough to get people to be like, "Ooh, I want to comment." Not like don't cross lines or anything like that, but just enough to
Poke the beehive a little bit.
just be like, yeah, yeah, exactly. Could poke the bear a little bit when they're
Mhm.
hibernating, not when they're awake.
You can do that. I mean, I do it all the time. And it's not just because, I mean, I'm trying to stir up engagement for engagement's sake. I am sharing my values with my audience. And then we're like self identifying. Like, is this somebody I still want to be connected with? Is this someone who I like the cut of their jib or not? They can unfollow me, or I can unfollow them, or connect with them, or whatever.
I think that helps align people with you and you with them of
Mm,
like, this is who I am, whether you
mhm.
like it or not. If you don't like whatever, but it's unpopular opinions, right? I mean,
Stay away from politics and religion on LinkedIn,
exactly. Yeah,
unless you want to
definitely
have
stay.
a really frustrating experience, or you are a politician or a religious leader, or you work in a religious institution.
But you could
Otherwise,
have
leave it out.
you could make a post that gosh, like I don't know, you mentioned IT quite a bit, but so you could have an unpopular opinion on a particular server
Mm,
brand. Be like, I'm in IT, and I'll tell you, I am really not a big fan of this particular style of server, and here's why. I've
yeah,
had problems with it. I've worked on them, whatever. They're a little harder to work with, whatever. Like it might be pushing the boundaries a little bit. You're kind of like saying, "Hey, I'm not a big fan of it. I've used it. Personal opinion might stir a little bit of controversy, might piss off the company a little bit, but
even
it's the
if you
only
don't call
personal
them out by
preference."
name, you
Yeah,
can say like, here, I have learned over time that here are some of the things that make a server. Here's some unexpected things that make a server easy or difficult to work with on a daily basis. Some things that I didn't expect. Some features that I wish existed that I don't deal with now.
or
Um,
customers. Here's what makes some customers easier to deal with or not. Or yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Just don't. Yeah, keep the names out of it. Just kind of keep the details and the cut enough details out of it so nobody really knows exactly what you're talking about unless they're
right.
maybe specifically in your industry and they can read between the lines enough to be like, I know exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to
Right.
call anyone out by name.
Yeah. I mean, unless you really want to be controversial, but you can push those boundaries just a little bit to get some people to read it and be like, oh wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting hot take. Like I'm going to engage with that
Right.
versus just being like, I really hate this, that, and the other. Like nobody's going to engage with that.
Right. Yeah. Don't. Complaining is not a good look.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of other things, but things to celebrating things, lessons, tying things in,
Mhm.
formatting things right. There's a lot of different things you can do. So, but hey, honestly, what they really just need to do is just get your book, and they can just read
There it is.
read through that. I mean,
I get deep in the weeds on all of those things, the kind of three verticals of profile optimization, network development, and content creation.
yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah,
really, I mean, obviously, I need to read your book, but LinkedIn's one of those things too. If you just get on there and if you just look at enough people's profiles,
yeah,
you'll see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then when you dive into your book, you'll see the way you've got everything in there. It'd be a good guide on how to kind of start optimizing things and working things through. But um, anything else that you want to add about your book?
well, not about the book. I think just about LinkedIn in general. Whether you read my book or not, don't be intimidated by it, and don't write it off because you hear other people say that it's a waste of whatever. It's very important. And I can tell you from someone who is a hiring manager on the civilian end of things, it's very important. It is. And don't be intimidated. Just dive in, make mistakes. Just do it as soon as possible.
You can always fix the mistakes, right? And you
Right? It's a
and you
living
never know
document.
you never know when you're going to need the profile. You may not need it for 6 months or 6 years,
Mm.
but to better to have and not need than to need and not have.
You still need to use it though. Like
Well,
even
yeah, I
if
still need to use it, but yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
even if you get the job, that doesn't mean like, well, I'm good on LinkedIn now.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's exactly. So,
Yeah.
Adam, I appreciate you coming on the show here and sharing with us and spending almost an hour with us to
You
break
bet.
down a lot about LinkedIn. There's a lot of great nuggets in here that people can take away, and hopefully that translates to better connections and yeah, maybe a few job opportunities for some people.
You bet, man. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Keith.
Yep. All right, there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed. Remember, you can go to the website and check out all kinds of resources. If there's something that's not on the website you think should be, please reach out, let us know so we could look at trying to add that. And if you're struggling for any reason, the National Suicide Hotline number is 988 press 1.